Puddle Lane, the magician's party. The magician's party. It was firework night. Sarah and Davy were out in the lane. They were making a guy. They had a pair of old trousers and a very old coat, stuffed with straw. They had an old bag for the guy's head. Two very old boots lay beside them in the lane. Sarah and Davy were out in Puddle Lane. They were making a guy. Harry came out of his house and ran up the lane to the others. He was carrying a pair of old gloves. Would these do for his hands? He asked. Yes, they'd be just right, said Davy. Harry came out of his house. He ran up the lane to Sarah and Davy. Let's get his boots on, and then he's finished, said Sarah. She stuffed the boots with straw, and Harry and Davy tied them onto the guy's legs. Harry and Davy put the boots on the guy's legs. Mr. Gotobed came out of his house. He was carrying a very old hat. Would you like this for your guy? He asked. You haven't got a hat for him, have you? No, we haven't, Mr. Gotobed, said Sarah. Thank you very much. It will look just right. She put the hat on the guy's head. Mr. Gotobed came out of his house. He had a very old hat. Mr. Gotobed asked, Would you like this for your guy? There was a loud toot toot from farther down the lane, and Peter Puffle came out of Mr. Puffle's house. He was blowing a tin horn. When he saw the others, he came running up the lane. Is that your guy? He asked. Yes, he is, said Sarah. He's a good one this year, said Harry. He's the best we've ever made, said Davy. Peter Puffle came up the lane. Peter asked, Is that your guy? Where's your bonfire? Asked Peter. We're not having a bonfire this year, said Davy. Have you got any fireworks? Asked Peter. Sarah shook her head. Not this year, she said. No fireworks, Sarah, said Mr. Gotobed. I wish I'd known that before. Have you got a bonfire? Asked Peter. No, said Davy. Have you got any fireworks? Asked Peter. No, said Sarah. I'm going to my granddad's, said Peter Puffle. He's built a big bonfire in a field. He's got a lot of fireworks, too. Mr. Puffle looked out of his door. Peter, he called, it's time to start. Peter ran back to the house. The others watched as he went off down the lane with Mr. Puffle. They felt rather sad. Peter Puffle went off down Puddle Lane. I know what we'll do, said Mr. Gotobed. We'll have a party. We'll have a party in Puddle Lane. But we haven't any fireworks, said Davy. That doesn't matter, said Mr. Gotobed. We can have a party just the same. Aren't you going to bed, Mr. Gotobed? Asked Harry. Not today, said Mr. Gotobed. We will have a party, said Mr. Gotobed. We will have a party in Puddle Lane. Mr. Gotobed went off down the lane to see Miss Baker. He had only just gone when Mrs. Pitter-Patter came up the lane. I hope you're not having fireworks tonight, Sarah, she said. All those nasty bangs. We haven't any fireworks this year, said Sarah. I'm very glad to hear it, said Mrs. Pitter-Patter. She went back down the lane. Mrs. Pitter-Patter came up the lane. She saw the guy. I hope you're not having fireworks, she said. The magician lived in the house at the end of Puddle Lane. He had been out in his garden. Nobody had seen him, but he had heard every word. I think I'll go to this party, the magician said to himself. Then there will be some fireworks, but I'll tell the Griffle first. The magician was in his garden. I will go to the party, he said. The Griffle lived in the magician's garden. He could vanish when he wanted to, and he was rather nervous. He appeared as soon as the magician called. Griffle, said the magician, I wanted to warn you. There's going to be a party in Puddle Lane tonight, and there will be fireworks. The magician called the Griffle. The Griffle came. There will be fireworks in Puddle Lane, said the magician. I don't like fireworks, said the Griffle. He looked very unhappy. I know you don't, said the magician. None of the animals in the garden like fireworks. They're frightened of all the flashes and bangs. I want you to go and tell them to stay at home and hide. Then they won't be frightened. I think I'll hide myself, said the Griffle. You can hide in my room, said the magician, but tell the other animals first. I don't like fireworks, said the Griffle. So the Griffle went round to the other animals in the garden and warned them to stay in their holes for the evening. He left a note in the old tree for the mice. The Griffle was afraid of mice, and he didn't want to see them. But he knew that Grandfather Mouse had learnt to read when he lived in Mr. Wideawake's toy shop. The Griffle left a note for the mice. He left it in the old tree. In Puddle Lane, everyone was getting ready for the party. Mr. Gotobed opened his door and called to Davy to help him. Between them, they carried a table out into the lane. Before very long, Miss Baker came out of her house with a big tray of cakes. Harry ran home and came back with Geeta and a big jug full of lemonade. Harry ran home. He came back with Geeta. They were just going to begin when they heard music. Someone was singing in Puddle Lane. They couldn't see anyone, but they could hear the words clearly. There's magic in the air. There's magic all around. There's magic in the sunshine. There's magic in the ground. There's magic in the puddles. There's magic in the rain. When you belong to Candletown and live in Puddle Lane. Someone was singing in Puddle Lane. The gates at the end of the lane opened and the magician came through. I thought you might like some fireworks, he said. Fireworks, cried Sarah and Davy. Fireworks, cried Harry and Geeta. Yes, fireworks, said the magician. Watch. And he snapped his fingers. The magician came into the lane. Fireworks, said the magician, and he snapped his fingers. At once the fireworks began. There were red and green stars and whirls of fire. There were big bangs. There were blue and yellow stars and flashes of light. The fireworks began. There were red and green stars. There were blue and yellow stars. Mrs. Pitter-Patter came rushing up the lane. Whatever are you doing? She cried. You said you weren't having fireworks. Are you frightened of fireworks? Asked the magician. Of course not, snapped Mrs. Pitter-Patter. Then you won't mind a few, will you? Said the magician. It's firework night, you know. A cracker went off in the lane. Stop it, cried Mrs. Pitter-Patter. You go home, said the magician. Mrs. Pitter-Patter came up the lane. You go home, said the magician. Mrs. Pitter-Patter was very cross. She was just going to say that she wouldn't go home when she remembered that this was a very great magician. She tossed her head and went off down the lane. When she got to her house, she went in and banged the door. The magician laughed. He snapped his fingers and rockets shot up into the sky. The magician snapped his fingers. When at last the fireworks were over, they had cakes and jellies and lemonade. We've never had fireworks like this before, said Peter. It's the best firework night we've ever had, said Davy. I expect the guy enjoyed it too, said Sarah. He's been able to watch the fireworks and he hasn't been burnt on a bonfire. When the fireworks were over, they had a party in Puddle Lane.